Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, put the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Held. And can I hear it one time for Fort James playing the bass? And how about for Alan Wicks on the drums? And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. And here we go.
Wow, I am so excited about having a packed house tonight. I love that people are sharing the bench. We've got 4 on the benches. We've got a couch up here. If folks are comfortable sitting on the floor, I think that's also totally fine. We've got some floor space up here. And we also have the overflow space as well in the other room. So feel free to snuggle in and yeah, get situated. So we are here as part of the City Nerd Nite series, and I'm really glad to be here on this fine Thursday because today Anchorage's first protected bike lane opened here downtown. If you didn't see it when you were walking in, it's actually right out front, which is wild. It's got flexi posts, it takes up a lane of traffic, and it's actually 2-way. So even though 6th Avenue was 1-way for vehicle traffic, you can go either way on your bike. The protected bike lane is gonna be open starting today through the summer, and as I understand it, I have some experts here in the room that can probably nod yes or no, through September, right? Nice, we're gonna get some fall biking in, it's gonna be great. And it's super important that folks are trying it out. So I encourage each and every one of you to get out on your bikes and try out that protected bike lane in the heart of downtown. It'll be really great. So City Nerd Nite is a series that the Anchorage Assembly hosts to talk about what makes a city. And the intent of City Nerd Nite is to bring Anchorage locals into the conversation and at the end of the day, just share cool ideas. So this series runs regularly. We're doing 4 this year at King Street Brewing. And it was because of the protected bike lane opening that we were like, oh, we gotta get downtown. So today you're here on a very special occasion at Aquila Space. Give it up for Aquila Space. And it's exciting to be here where we actually are because Aquila Space is a creative, cooperative gallery space 3 doors down from here, I guess technically 2 doors down. And they've had such great success with local artists and building community that when these spaces opened, the mall actually reached out to them and said, hey, are you looking to grow? And they said, yes, we'll take this opportunity. So I'm proud to be one of the first events held in this space, and I hope that you all take some time to walk around and experience it and be thinking about what events you could bring here or how we can continue to build community here in this venue. Aquila Space is great. Cafecito Bonito is also here. We love them. Yay! Cafecito Bonito has a mocktail bar, and I'm actually drinking the spicy pepito, and it is really, really good, perfectly refreshing. There are a couple of other drinks on the mocktail menu, and there's a taco bar, and we have tres leches for dessert, which is really good. So tonight we're building on a couple of iterations of City Nerd Nite where we're collecting feedback, and I'm a sponge for your feedback. So let me know what you think of the evening, what you think of the space, the way that we run things. I'm open to anything and everything that you have to say to me. And so one of the pieces of feedback is that we'll have an intermission in between presentations. So we're gonna take a quick break. There are restrooms out this door and then to the right. And there's also a spare restroom in this closed door. So if needed during the intermission, we can go ahead and open that up. So know that we'll have a chance to walk around and get some new grub and refresh and then settle back in for the last half of the program. Okay, so housekeeping things, restroom, blah, 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 open to feedback, would love to hear from you. What else? Oh, behind me, we have bicycle parking. Bike lane, bicycles, really great stuff. Wanted to let everybody know that that room is being attended. So there's somebody there watching all of our, I know, very nice and meaningful equipment. So somebody's over there. We're also live streaming. Give it up for our production team. Yay! And that means that tonight is being recorded. It's available on YouTube. You'll be able to see the Nerds slides there in the description. And then if there are any other resources or cool things that come out of tonight, we'll post them there as well. That also means that there is a previous City Nerd Nite that you can go and watch that's all about public finance. Very cool. And we'll continue to do it. One of the things that I'd really love to hear from you as well is ideas around topics or themes, and the theme of tonight is transportation talks. Yay! So tonight we have 6 Anchorage locals who in their spare time are thinking about transportation. Very cool. And we're going to get things started with somebody who... I say this with peace and love, Daniel. I think you are a nerd for transportation. And so Daniel is a bonus nerd. He is a current assembly member, and he's going to kick us off for transportation talks. Give it up for Daniel. And then there's also a pointer if you ever need it.
Okay.
Get real close to that thing.
Hello, can you hear me? Check, check, check. Sup, nerds? Okay, my presentation is called Whose Street Is This? Now, before I dive into this, we have actual transportation, traffic engineers, public transit. Aaron from AMATS is in the back. Shout out. No heckling me, guys, okay? Fact check me later. Thanks for coming to City Nerd Nite. Transportation is the fabric of our community. Our threads of roads and trails interweave throughout our community and connect us to each other, local businesses, and the wild urban community that we love. How we manage our public right-of-way, design it, build it, maintain it, it isn't always something that we readily think of or is top of mind every day. When we walk out into our streets, we don't really care who built it or who is responsible for maintaining it. We just care that it's safe and that it works. We want our roads plowed, right, and our potholes filled. But we're not just walking out into the street. This is City Nerd Nite, and we're getting into transportation. So, in a room full of fellow nerds, I'm going to do my best to explain whose road is this. Obviously, we're here in the municipality of Anchorage, the MOA, being our most local form of government involved in transportation planning and operations. The MOA has entire teams dedicated to traffic engineering, public transit, maintenance and operations, and planning. And there's a ton of collaboration and coordination to keep our streets as safe, clear, and pothole-free as possible. But it's not just that simple. If it was, we wouldn't be here. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. We also have roads that are controlled by the State of Alaska Department of Transportation, or DOT for short. We are in the central region, which includes Anchorage and the Mat-Su Valley, the Kenai Peninsula, and all the way west, encompassing Bethel and surrounding communities. They own and maintain some of our roads, particularly our more high-volume highways. So here's a great map of the combination of owners and maintenance providers for streets. In red, you'll see state DOT roads. In blue, MOA roads. Green shows the roads maintained by hyperlocal, limited road service areas. To make this even more confusing, there also exist things called TORAs, Transfer of Responsibility Agreements, so that on the same street, you may have one entity in charge of maintaining one segment and another entity in charge of the other segment. or even opposite sides of a street. It may be one entity's responsibility to plow the sidewalk. On the other side of the street, another entity. So what a tangled web we weave. What is a road service area? Service areas have authority to provide basic road maintenance, to make capital road improvements, and to save for capital road projects. In addition, a service area may have other authorities like fire protection and rescue, parks and recreation, etc. ARDSA, outlined in yellow in the map, is the main road service area capturing much of the Anchorage Bowl. In addition, we have rural road service areas. They also have authority to provide basic road maintenance, to make capital road improvements, and to save for capital road projects. Subursa, that was Kyle, he lives in Eagle River, he can say that. Nobody else can say that. They're a prime example of a rural road service area. Okay, in addition, we have limited road service areas. Anchorage's limited road service areas are specialized districts within the MOA where property owners fund and manage road maintenance and improvements through local assessments. These areas often encompass residential neighborhoods outside the main urban center, where road services are tailored to meet specific local needs. Residents in the LRSAs typically pay for services such as snow removal, road grading, minor repairs, ensuring their roads remain passable and safe year-round. The establishment and management of LRSAs allows for a more focused and efficient allocation of resources, addressing the unique challenges of maintaining road infrastructure in less densely populated areas of Anchorage. However, the trade-off is that some of these areas do not contribute to some of the amenities found in the main service areas like ARDSA, despite the fact that they may utilize them. Street ownership. You can see how quickly this map gets complicated. What's even more complicated is how each agency needs to work together to plan for our transportation system. That brings us to the Anchorage Metropolitan Area Transportation Solutions, or AMATS. This is the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Anchorage area. Metropolitan planning organizations are required by the federal government in all urbanized areas with populations over 50,000 people. AMATS is the formal body of collaboration and coordination for regional transportation planning and project selection here in Anchorage. Through a structure of committees, I can see eyes glazing over, but just stick with me. Through a structure of committees, including the Policy Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee, AMATS brings together experts from all of these layers of state and municipal government. The Policy Committee is comprised of representatives from the Assembly, such as myself, the Mayor's staff, DOT, and the Department of Environmental Conservation, and is ultimately responsible for prioritizing projects and programming millions and millions of dollars of federal, state, and local funding. I myself serve on the AMATS Policy Committee with my colleague and co-chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, Meg Zolotel, and I believe our newest Assembly member representing Eagle River, Mark Littlefield, will be joining us on that body. This graphic shows, again, a tangled web of plans, transportation plans. The plans on this slide go through a public process. They're updated regularly. They're the central basis for how transportation is planned in our community. Each transportation infrastructure project we want to see built needs to be reflected in one or more of these living documents. The AMATS Transportation Improvement Program, that's our short-range transportation plan, is embedded in the Capital Improvement Program, which then in turn informs the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which also informs the State Transportation Improvement Program. Through this cross-reference layering of plans and programs, we leverage incomprehensible amounts of federal funds to the tune of more than $100 million every year to fuel this system of building infrastructure, and yet we still rely on local dollars to help maintain it. So, this graphic illustrates some headlines of pedestrian collisions. We use streets every day, and yet more and more we see people dying on our streets. On average, 19 people die on Anchorage streets every year. 43% of these deaths are people walking or riding a bike. For every person killed, 150 are seriously injured. And in 2022, a report found that those who die are disproportionately people of color. Indigenous people are killed at the highest rates of all measured ethnicities. So we've got a long way to go when it comes to addressing our pedestrian-involved collisions. This is a map of the high injury network, areas in Anchorage that are where we see more danger to pedestrians and non-motorized users. There are versions of this map found in our AMATS non-motorized plan and in the Vision Zero plan. At the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that streets are for people. They're designed to connect communities, foster social interactions, and ensure safe, efficient movement. They have to support walking, cycling, public transit. They have to enhance urban life and promote environmental sustainability. Prioritizing people over vehicles transforms streets into vibrant, inclusive spaces that reflects the heart of any city. As Anchorage wrestles with pedestrian deaths and injuries, as our street maintenance teams struggle to keep up with our failing infrastructure and increasing snowfalls, as we all need to move around town, we need to face the reality that for regional transportation to improve, we need to be all in. It requires various entities and the public communicating and solving problems. And today, I think we saw a terrific example of those entities working together to provide a benefit to our community, our first ever protected bike lane downtown. So just an encouragement to our community and to all of those entities, let's keep up the good work and let's help make Anchorage a safe place for all of our users. Thank you.
Give it up for Dan. Thank you, thank you. Is this your water? Yeah, nice. And listen, Dan did a great job. Dan really kicked it off well. I will say, you did go a little over 7 minutes. And hey, I'll be honest, I don't think that I said that these are 7-minute presentations, so I'm gonna take the hit on that one. These are 7-minute presentations, and I have a timer screen up here that I'll reset. It's for presenters, hopefully you all can see it. For the audience, you all can see it. Our viewers online cannot see it. Maybe in August, we'll figure that one out. That would be great. So next up, I'd like to welcome our first nerd of the night, Mary Dean. Mary Dean, I'm going to put 7 minutes on the timer.
Hey, Allie.
Yeah, I'll help you out.
Wait. Yes. I'm the shortest nerd of the night, too. All right, hello. First of all, I want to apologize to all of you. I'm taking you back to winter, and I know no one wants to go back to this past winter, so I'll try and be quick. What I want to share with you is a winter walk in Fairview. This event was the last event of the fabulous Anchorage Design Week of 2024 that was put on by Fairview Community Council and NeighborWorks and Anchorage Museum primarily. Great event. So we did about a half-mile walk starting at the Greater Friendship Baptist Church on East 13th, crossed over Ingra, Hyder, Gamble, walked down through the Cars parking lot because the street wasn't real accessible, and then back on East 14th, crossing the same major streets, up Juneau, back to the Greater Friendship Baptist Church. And they are fabulous there. They were so accommodating. It was great. All right, I have to hit this. Okay. Before I tell you about the walk, I want to talk for a minute about the Ingra Gamble couplet, which I noted that on the slide that we saw of high injury rates. That really stood out to me, so keep that in mind. So I apologize for the yellow drawing, but I was trying to give some indication of where Fairview is. Rough indication, sorry. But as you can see, Ingra and Gamble really split Fairview in half. So back in 1964, after the Good Friday earthquake, the city decided that it was time for Fairview to go through urban renewal. And one of the major things that they did in that time was make Ingra and Gamble one-way streets, Ingra going north, Gamble going south, 4 lanes of traffic. And there we have the Ingra-Gamble couplet. And I want to share, got to get this straight here. I want to share a little bit of history, a context of that. This is based on an article that David Reamer wrote with a woman doing her PhD at the University of Alaska back in 2014. And I was really struck by these quotes as how I still hear people saying the same things as I said back in 2014. My favorite is, they put the freeway through there. It knocked out a lot of businesses. You know, it's difficult to walk across the streets. There's no consultation with the neighborhood. They just came in and bulldozed it and set it up. And I think that's how the neighborhood still feels about it. There are multiple efforts going on to improve it, and hopefully we'll see some improvement. But now, back to our walk. With that background in mind. So East 13th and 14th have sidewalks on them. You can't see much of them in February, though. Some were shoveled a little. There was always ice and snow on the sidewalk, even where people had shoveled. And quite honestly, on 14th, we didn't see a sidewalk. It was impossible to tell what safety features they might have had they been visible. But one of the most distressing things I think that I saw is looking at Ingra in the top picture. There's a sidewalk under that snow, but you can't walk on the sidewalk, and a lot of people have to go north and south on that road. The same is true for Gamble and East 14th. There's sidewalks there, but they're not available in February for people to walk on. Now, in the bottom picture, that was East 14th near Hyder, and it really looks like it was a snow dump from the street being plowed, and it's on top of a sidewalk. So this is a bit of a problem. Now, several members of our group were pretty brave and actually tried to walk on the sidewalk on East 13th. Most of us walked in the street, and I did, that's for sure. The condition of the street wasn't really ideal, but at least it was plowed. It was compacted snow with random chunks of ice here and there, as you can see. But it was flat, so that was good. All the neighborhood pedestrians that we saw on our walk were actually walking in the street. And we noticed a couple people walking with walkers that really seemed to be struggling, but I think they had to go out and do whatever it is they had to do. So luckily, the walk was on a Sunday, so it was a bit quieter than it normally is in that area. That was kind of good and bad. It would have been good if we got some more statistics on how busy it was, but for safety's sake, it was good. So there are traffic lights with crossing signals on Ingra and Gamble for both 13th and 14th. I assume, well, there are crosswalks there too. I can't tell you much about them. But there is no audible component to the crosswalk, which is unfortunate, because I think some people might need that. There's also no signage alerting drivers to pedestrians crossing. And I think that too is something, given the speed that traffic often goes at, and wasn't going at that on the Sunday we were there, but it does. It would be good to have that warning sign. So the streets east of Ingra were a bit better maintained than those west of Ingra, but regardless of the side, there was no place for people to sit. Bus stops didn't have any shelter, didn't have any place to sit. So, overall impressions of the route. It's not the most inviting route in the world, especially when you go west of Ingra. And overall, it didn't have a real strong feeling of safety and being well taken care of. So my final thoughts. We saw one installation of street art, which was really nice to see, and I believe that was put in by the Fairview Community Council a number of years ago. Like I said, the neighborhood has two distinct areas, east of Ingra and west of Ingra. East is more residential, better maintained. West has clearly seen better days. There's abandoned buildings, there's properties that aren't very well maintained, and snow dumps here and there. A general sense of just forgotten in time, which goes back to the history, I think, of the whole Ingra Gamble couplet and things that have been thought about. So, recommendations. The area is a mix of commercial and residential buildings. Some buildings appear unoccupied, but like I said, many haven't received any love for a long, long time. To me, it really seems to exemplify what happens when you put a freeway in the middle of a neighborhood. And it's something that our whole country faces, but Fairview really faces it. Hyder is an interesting street in that mix. We saw a snow dump there. It's also eerily vacant and kind of looks like a prime candidate for some good development, some improvements. And maybe, just maybe, it's the place for a Woonerf. And I know I'm over my time, so I'll be quick. But I want to tell you what a Woonerf is. A Woonerf is a living street. It's an area that has lower speed limits, and it is designed for all kinds of active transportation and for safety. So just imagine if Hyder could be a Woonerf, and it could be a place where people could walk, ride bikes, run, maybe even have places to sit, where people could meet up with friends and have coffees, and maybe even people, kids, could have someplace safe to play. So, what do you think about having a Woonerf?
All for the Woonerf. Thanks, Mary Dean. Give it up for Mary Dean.
All right.
Mary Dean, you're wearing a very cool sticker.
Pardon?
You're wearing a very cool sticker.
I know, and I have more of these stickers, and I will be glad to give you one at the end of this if you want. So thank you.
Grab your sticker. I'd like for everybody to leave here talking about Woonerfs. Woonerfs. All right. Woonerfs. Woonerf. Okay, thank you. Great. Well, folks, I'm delighted because I've talked about how today's a special evening. It's special because we're here. It's special because we're at Aquila Space. It's special because of the protected bike lane opening. It's also special because we have 2 Daniels tonight. Hooray! So, Daniel, come on up. Give it up for Daniel.
Take it away. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel. I'm just a citizen of this fine city, speaking my own opinions, exercising my First Amendment rights here. If I offend anybody, there's some people. Brad, I'm sorry. Aaron, I'm sorry. Throw your tomatoes before 8 a.m., after 5 p.m. So what I want to talk about today is traffic impact analyses, which are, I would say, an integral part of pretty much all urban development of the past maybe 50 to 70 years. I would kind of describe these as a bit of a mixture of alchemy and maybe some sort of junk science. That might be a little bit brutal, but I'll get into my reasoning for that. So what are traffic impact analyses? It's basically a tool for modeling change, specifically the type of change that might come from new development, usually housing development. This is an example from Anchorage, and they hire an engineering firm to do this, and they basically say with amazing precision, actually. I'm a bit skeptical of the precision. Okay, 5 of the 32 lots will be expected to exit here, we'll go this way. So they're making predictions about very specific travel behavior in the future, and then these predictions are used to sort of impose a cost for new infrastructure, new lights, or different things with the development. So what is, and this is municipal policy, you can use traffic impact analysis, you can require it in platting, zoning, building permit processes. So it's a pretty strong tool that can impose a lot of penalties on a lot of development, quite frankly. So what are traffic impact analyses really? Well, there's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I'd say they are a way for municipalities to establish a legal rationale to 1, block new development, 2, justify new road infrastructure, or 3, force new developments to build new road infrastructure so the municipality or the city doesn't have to do it. That's a big one because road infrastructure is really expensive. And what are the main problems? Well, I'd say the main problem, 1, they're based on a faulty premise. 2, they're based on bad data or maybe a very narrow set of data. And 3, they perpetuate car addiction and dependency if you think that's a bad thing. Not everybody thinks that's bad. So the faulty premise is this basic idea that everything is based on that all land uses generate traffic, right? They are saying that a duplex, an apartment, a grocery store, a business, that has the power to generate, as if that land use can go downstairs into the garage, turn the key, and make a trip happen. That's not how travel works, right? Trips happen when people choose to make trips. But it's easier to assess and regulate if you're going on the land use, because then you can get them at the permit rather than the individual. The second thing is bad data. So I don't want to say that the people collecting data made a mistake, but just that all of the data used from these traffic impact analyses come from suburban locations. And they'll even tell you that. They say nearly all the data comes from suburban areas. There's no transit, single-use, homogeneous. This is a problem because it means all the predictions are going to be what people might behave like in suburban areas. And here's an example. So say we have the national nutritionist saying, we want to figure out nutrition guidelines for children. What should we do? Let's go out and observe what children eat. So they go out, it happens to be October 31st. They say, wow, all these kids are eating 65 to 70 candy bars per person. That is our standard. And they say, terrific, we've established the standards, we'll send it up to the president. The president says, great news, everybody, nutritional guidelines for 2025. We have the new nutritional pyramid. It looks like this. Basic of candy, fruit-flavored candy, milk candy. And you think, okay, what would be the result of this? Well, we'd have a country full of a ton of sick kids and a country with insane candy costs, right? And then the scientists scratching their heads thinking, well, what's going on? Why do we have these costs? This is what we have with road infrastructure. We have a country with a lot of road deaths, a lot of road violence, a lot of road injuries, and also insane road costs. It's because we build this into everything we do, basically. And this has been called the black hole of road infrastructure. You have drivers on the road, you observe that, that becomes your baseline. This is where the traffic impact analysis gets created. That then is used to require new developments to build more roads, more parking, more sort of traffic lights. This then this is accommodating drivers first. When people move in, they say, well, of course I'm going to bring my car. It's designed for driving. This makes driving easier. And then you get more drivers on the road, and you get stuck in this perpetual sort of spiral into the black hole. And that's why so much of the United States looks like this, because this is all designed where the needs of the city are subservient to the needs of the driver. This is Anchorage, but this could really be pretty much anywhere else. The picture I showed before, that was 4 Fred Meyers. One of them was in Alaska, the other 3 were in Washington and Oregon, but it all looks the same, right? Because the fundamental programming is exactly the same. So what's the alternative? Well, 1, we have existing, driving is inevitable, all new development means driving, and you must do a TIA and accommodate drivers first. The alternative, which I propose, is that driving is a choice that people make. It's not something that land uses do, it is something that people decide to do, based on the infrastructure that cities build. For example, you build a bike lane like this, you might see people deciding to make a different trip based on the infrastructure. And so the requirement in code then would be all new development must provide some means to connect to the transportation system around it, instead of all new development must provide adequate driving access for everybody. Because when we're doing that, we're getting stuck in that black hole. So, final takeaways. A city that uses TIAs, and pretty much every city in the United States uses them, so this isn't just about Anchorage, will consistently, if they use them consistently, it will never not be car-centered. Because it is tying every bit of growth, has to also be built growth for drivers, right? All new growth has to accommodate growth for drivers. The second is that TIAs are a very powerful tool for blocking new development, especially for community groups, neighborhood groups, or exacting, I'm going to call them tithes from new development, to build new road infrastructure, other improvement that benefit drivers first. Because if I come in and I say, I'd love to build an apartment downtown, somebody says, we did a TIA, you're going to produce this many trips, we need you to fix this intersection that's been on our CIP list for 20 years, but because you want to do this and you've got money, we're going to hit you with the bill. And then the third thing An alternative to TIAs would require cities to actively manage their infrastructure, specifically right-of-way. Anchorage is doing a great job with this, better and better all the time. But this is really tough because it's true. People will drive, and people drive if it's convenient. One of the best ways to manage driving if you have too much congestion is by managing the right-of-way, but that's complicated. Managing parking is complicated. Taking away lanes is complicated. Reallocating space from car lanes to bike lanes is complicated. No, it's not. I hope that was Colin's voice. So, thank you very much.
Daniel, thank you, thank you. Folks, I heard a whoop, or no, it's not, and I think that it was coming from the overflow space. So I just want to remind everybody in the overflow space, hello friends, thank you for being there. Yay! Oh, I love you so much, that's great. The presentations are being live streamed. So if you would like to view the slides, you can go ahead and pull up that live stream. There will probably be some couple of second lag, but you can go ahead and take a look at those there. I also failed to mention that we have note cards floating around. We have sticky notes and pens out on the table in the overflow area. And so during the intermission, if you have questions for the presenters, we're going to move into a Q&A at the end of our program, and we'll be able to answer a couple of those questions. We'll have staff. Michaela, raise your hand, say hi. Hi, Michaela. Staff is going to walk around and collect those. So after we get back from the intermission, you'll hold up your cards, and we'll collect those and get those ready for the Q&A. But we have 2 more presentations before the intermission, and I'd like to welcome Brad. Brad, come on up.
Okay, let me get this all set up. Thank you for all the presenters. My name is Brad Coy, and I am happy to confess that I am a traffic engineer. And I bet you money that I've prepared more traffic impact analyses than anyone in this room combined, probably times 10. But that aside, my presentation today is less about traffic engineering and TIAs and more about these 2 numbers. Any guesses on what these 2 numbers represent? Okay, a percentage, yeah.
Like only 800 people or 33% of those who died or something.
Justin might know, but 800 is the number of unique miles that I have biked on roads and trails in the municipality of Anchorage during the past 2 years since I became a bike commuter. This correlates with 33% of the area's total bikeable infrastructure, at least according to Wanderer Earth. Some of those roads really aren't bikeable, but that's another story. Wanderer is a mapping service that pulls all my rides from Strava and identifies which segments are brand new to me. It is definitely a fun game, and it is a fun way to be able to bike around Anchorage. I am still trying to catch Justin Terrio. He's right here at the front of the room. He's actually gone biking like the night of the last day of the month to beat me. Yes, it is fun. And I would love to connect with any others that bike and use Wanderer Earth. And if you want to start doing this, come talk with Justin and me, and we would be happy to introduce you to this fun feature. So that aside, why am I doing this? What is my underlying motivation for undertaking the quest to see all of Anchorage by bike? As I talk about my journey tonight, I hope I can also inspire some of you to integrate biking into your transportation choices as well. At the heart of why I bike is my family and the benefit that it's been to our finances. Raising 5 kids with 1 income is no small feat. And so we've had to be very creative with our decisions over the years, including the transportation choices we make. And when my wife and I got married in 2005, we were poor college students living in Utah without a car. And so we biked, took transit, and borrowed a car when we needed one. In 2006, we bought our first car. In 2007, we moved to Oregon, had our first daughter, and made our 1-car household work by me choosing to bike to work or take the bus. That let my wife and our daughter be able to travel wherever they needed to go. Jump ahead a few years to 2012. We have 3 kids, and 3 car seats do not fit in that car. And so we bought a minivan. I was driving to a neighboring city for work, and so we decided to keep our Volvo. Fast forward a few more years, 2021, and our family of 7, now living in Alaska, was very much an active family, as you can see from that photo, but we were very car-centric in our transportation choices. However, in the spring of 2022, our Volvo started having major issues that we were having trouble diagnosing. We tried at a few mechanics and none of them could figure it out. And so after weighing the alternatives, I decided to try out bike commuting again. So I pulled out my old bike, all my gear, dusted it all off, and because it was April, I figured that I could try that for a few months as we worked to figure out what to do with the cars. But then after about 2 months, once we got the car, it did finally get figured out what was wrong with it. But I was enjoying biking so much, I decided that I would just keep at it. I was hooked, which was a super good thing because in 2023, we ended up having major car issues. And by major, I mean acts of God and a crash. So we had a total, our minivan was totaled in a crash in June of 2023. And then in August, we had a tree and a windstorm fall on the Volvo and a car that we were borrowing. I think God was telling us that we shouldn't be car dependent. Because I was biking everywhere, I was able to get where I needed to go, and it allowed us the flexibility that we needed to be able to work through this situation until we could buy the 2 cars that we now have. We were able to get through, get some great deals, and it was super valuable. So jump forward to now. My oldest daughter can now drive, which jumped up our number of drivers to 3. With 2 cars, what that means is that my bike commuting has allowed my family to be able to get where we need to go. It has definitely been a huge blessing to be able to do. And I would encourage any of you, if any of what I've said rings a bell, try out bike commuting. I'm testament that you can get pretty much anywhere in Anchorage by bike, and Justin is as well. So that is not all, though. It isn't just about the family finances. In addition, biking everywhere has been amazing for my health. This is me after running Mount Marathon race in Seward last 4th of July. Besides bike commuting, the only training I've done is hiking with my family, previewing the course, and going on a couple moderate runs. And guess what? I almost broke the top 100, and I qualified for the race again this year. Which, it's lifestyle. I was able to bike commute, and that's my main training. After the race, one of my daughters said to me, she said, "Active lifestyle for the win," which is true. I love that my chosen mode of transportation, which is something I have to do anyway to get from place A to B, is also my primary form of exercise. In 2007, I wrote in my journal, "I have always known that exercising was one of the best things I could do for myself. It just hasn't always been easy to make sufficient time to do it." Isn't that the truth? It is nice to know that I now have found an effective way to force myself to exercise every day. Well, at least until we bought the second car. But I will say that I have not felt this way very often for the past few years because of one other item I want to talk about. And that is how my personal drive for connecting community has really made it so that I love the biking. Does anyone else here participate in Bike to Work Day? So connecting with our community is something that I love, and it drives me every single day. My responsibilities as a municipal traffic engineer put as one of my responsibilities to include safeguarding and facilitating Anchorage's transportation needs. And I have found that the best way for me to understand our community's needs is to spend time using our system, especially by bike. It is fast enough to cover a lot of ground, but slow enough to look around and take it all in. My ability to do my job is significantly enhanced as I spend time biking through neighborhoods around town. I've biked through many of our city's trailer home parks and seen the difference a well-built road makes. I've gone up and down our residential roads that are narrow, mostly gravel, and have only one way in and one way out. I have circled around countless cul-de-sacs that limit connectivity and must be a challenge to maintain in the winter, and there are hundreds of them out there. Justin's nodding his head. It's kind of funny sometimes to go ride circles around cul-de-sacs, but it's what we do on Wanderer. I've also biked on all of our downtown streets, including 6th Avenue, which today looks like this. This protected bike lane is a game changer. It feels so much different than it did. I'm one of the crazy people that did bike 6th Avenue occasionally before the protected bike lane. But having this, it feels amazing. One other thing I want to mention is that as I bike through each new neighborhood, I find myself reflecting on the transportation system that greets each new resident as they leave and return home every day. And I feel a greater connection to them and a desire to serve them. And that is why I continue every month to add new roads and trails to my Wanderer map. I hope that you will join me. Thank you very much.
Nicely done, Brad. Thanks for sharing your story. All right. Next up, and our last before the intermission, we have Ben. Ben, I'm going to make sure that your timer's good. And then we can also adjust that mic.
Sounding okay?
Yeah, I think we'll need it.
Check 1, 2. I should be able to find that. Okay. All right, my name is Ben. I am not a traffic engineer, but I am an enthusiastic transportation nerd. Also speaking tonight just as myself. So have you ever had it happen where you come across a new word or new idea for the first time, and then the next day you see it again and again, and all of a sudden you just can't avoid it? That's what happened to me with the 85th percentile speed. It's one of the most ubiquitous and foundational metrics in traffic engineering, but one that is poorly understood, often misapplied, and I think kind of mysterious. So what is it? The 85th percentile speed, it's the speed at or below which 85% of the drivers travel on a road segment. To get there, you do a speed study and you measure the speed of all the cars going by. Rank them fastest to slowest, take the top 15% off, and that speed that's left is the 85th percentile speed. So it's a simple summary statistic that's used to describe speeds on roadways, but as I'll argue today, contains so much more. I hope after this talk, you'll be better prepared to dig deep when this comes up in transportation planning. We're getting into what this number says about the road, about driver behavior, but most importantly, about some of the assumptions and values that are built into this number. So where is it used? In short, everywhere, but the big one is setting speed limits. The default way to set speed limits in the US is set it right next to that 85th percentile speed. So drivers set the speed limits. But also, whether a place gets traffic calming, what type of bike infrastructure you get, what type of signals and crossing infrastructure, lots of places. And this is something that's embedded really deeply into our public policy. So that top federal guidance for decades has been to set speed limits within 5 miles per hour of that 85th percentile speed. So states then take that guidance and they apply it. So Alaska law requires we look at several different things for speed limits, but DOT's policies and procedures place the 85th percentile speed right at the center. So the 85th percentile speed is the principal determining factor in setting speed limits. It's one of those things that's just hard-coded into traffic engineering. So where did this all come from? Well, rural highways in the 1940s. There is a pretty influential study that found that the further drivers are away from the average speed, the more crashes you get. So this idea that we want to manage speeds to have this uniform distribution of speeds at speeds that drivers are willing to drive, rather than managing for absolute speeds, is one of those ideas that has proved to be very enduring throughout the years, but does have several flaws that we'll get into here. But there's also kind of an ideology that 85th percentile speed goes hand in hand with, and that's that drivers in general are being safe and are making good decisions. So states use that idea in justifying the use of 85th percentile. So most drivers are observed to be careful, reasonable, and prudent. That's Alaska DOT. Texas DOT says the large majority of drivers are reasonable and prudent. So the last main idea is that the design of roads is a pretty big influence on what speed people choose to drive. So what are those factors that influence those speeds? Well, what makes you go fast? Wide lanes, straight direction of travel, nice wide clear zones on either side, and kind of the absence of things entering the roadway. So think A Street here in Anchorage. And the opposite of that, what makes you go slow? Complexity, curves, things in the roadway, things getting close to the cars, people, things entering the roadway. So think downtown Juneau for that example. All right, we're gonna get really specific now. We're gonna do a speed study over in East Anchorage on Beaver Place. So great little place over by Cheney Lake, over by Nunaca Valley, 25-mile-an-hour road that we're gonna look at here. So here's what it looked like a few days back. So the speed study, we're gonna measure the speed of all the cars going by. We're then going to plot them and rank them fastest to slowest. So you see the fastest speeds on top in excess of 45, 50 miles an hour, and the slowest speeds on the bottom. Remember that formula? We're gonna take the top 15%, chop them off. That speed that's left is the 85th percentile speed, which is right around 40 miles per hour for this section of Beaver Place. This is just showing 1 hour, but this is how it ends up. So that's where we have it, but I wanna go one step deeper and look at this whole distribution of speeds and what's going on. So what else do we see? One thing is that the large majority of traffic is going faster than that 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. So is there something about Beaver Place that maybe compels people to drive faster? Also, on the top end and bottom ends of that distribution, with the 85th percentile speed, we don't look at those top 15%. We, by definition, cut them off. But when you do that, you don't get a chance to examine those speeds in depth. And we do see speeds hitting 45, 50, 55 miles per hour. Also on that lower end, though, what's happening there with speeds that are below 20 miles an hour, below 10? Are there some environmental factors going on that explain something about Beaver Place that we should know about? Potholes. All right, so we've seen 85th percentile in action on Beaver Place. What do we think about how it works, how well is it performing, and how should we apply it? I think there are a few issues, and I'm gonna hit 4 of them real quick. One is you have to be careful with the 85th percentile speed in that it can mask a speeding problem. So if your 85th percentile speed is just a few miles above the speed limit, it may not appear that you've got a speeding problem, but that's a whole 15% of cars that you're not looking at right there. In the case of Beaver Place, there's 5,000 cars per day, so there's 785 cars per day that you're not looking at if you're only looking at the 85th percentile speed. Next, this can confuse the comfort of driving a speed with a more complete risk assessment and decision-making process. So our ability to accurately judge risk to ourselves and risk to others does not have a great track record, to say nothing of our ability to even correctly judge speeds. We tend to underestimate speeds all the time. Third, this takes a concept from highway vehicle flow world and then applies it to a different context, to neighborhood streets, to urban streets, and that's not the context for which it was intended. And finally, in the speed limit context, this allows the fastest drivers to set the standard, and you can kick off this cycle of escalating speeds when speed limits become a target or a goal and not just a limit. But I'm being pretty harsh on this summary statistic. There's got to be some good redeeming value to it, and there is. So I'm going to cover 3 of those real quick. One, it is an elegant metric. You can distill the entirety of traffic down to one number. So you can do before and after. You can compare things. You can do measurements like that. It also recognizes that there is a wide variety of comfort with risk. Not all drivers have that same risk tolerance, and I think that's a fact that's real. And so third, and most importantly, I think the 85th percentile speed can be pretty useful in describing what type of driving and what type of speed a road compels or invites or brings about. And so if we accept that, we've got a route forward, and then we can go ahead and we can tweak infrastructure. You can see out in 6th Avenue, like, we can change infrastructure and we can do it quickly. So what is the 85th percentile speed? It's not the average speed, it's not the most common speed, it's not the speed limit, it's not the safest speed, but it is, I hope you all agree with me, undoubtedly the 85th percentile speed and so much more. So.
Thank you, Ben. All right, folks. Well, as we head into our intermission period, I'd like to give a few reminders. You have note cards. There are sticky notes in the overflow area. I'm going to ask that if you're seated here in this space, that you get up and you transport yourself. And maybe give folks in the overflow area an opportunity to circulate through. We have 2 more presentations and then the Q&A. Enjoy tacos and mocktails, and we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, put this show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Helt. And can I hear it one time for Fort James playing the bass? And how about for Alan Wicks on the drums? And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. Here we go.
Hey folks, it's time to start getting seated again. We know that seating is limited. Come on into the presentation space. Bring your note cards, bring your questions. Evan's jamming. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. Welcome on back in. We're going to get this show rolling once more. You know, one of my favorite things about City Nerd Nite is that it's pretty casual. We're in good company. We're all friends here. And one of the things that I learned in this City Nerd Nite is that City Nerd Nite is the show where everyone gets 7 minutes. And 7 minutes doesn't matter, and which is great. It applies pressure and gives people a sense of time, yeah. But really, we don't mind. Go on over. That's a great time. You know, I, at a previous City Nerd Nite, took a poll about whether or not 7 minutes was a hard stop or if there was, you know, some buffer time. And the room was unanimous, almost. There was one person who wanted it to be a hard stop. So would love, again, your feedback. Open to your ideas or interpretations of this. We have some space up front on the couch. I see 1 or 2 more chairs available, so feel free to come back in. Otherwise, we'll keep this show rolling. In our first half of the program, we talked a lot about the technical mechanisms of transportation and shared some personal stories about using our transportation systems. And in the second half of the program, we're shifting towards ideas. Food for thought. What could our city be? Where can we go? And so, to bring us into the future, I am very excited about this next presentation, and I hope that you'll give a warm welcome to Evan. Evan, everybody.
Thank you, thank you. Hello, my name is Evan Leaf. I'm a student at UAA and a huge advocate for public transit. My presentation will be on the Anchorage Tram project, or why Anchorage needs light rail transit. A quote by Gustavo Petro, the former mayor of Bogota, is a developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation. Firstly, defining trams. Trams are a light rail transit. Their main purpose is to serve inner-city transportation. They are multi-vehicle trains that run on rail and are powered by electricity. Trams service on a street level, and they are frequent and larger than buses. And there is the inside of a Portland tram and the tram in Melbourne. What do trams accomplish? Trams create better scenarios for economic and population growth. Stations become centers of communities, be they in neighborhoods, business districts, or parks. And density and development is encouraged by eliminating excess parking in popular areas. On the top right is the Seward Highway, and on the bottom right is a shared street with trams, bikes, and cars in Tallinn, Estonia. What Anchorage currently looks like is a lot of this. There is excessive parking, there are wide roads, and it is very difficult to walk within the city. Everything is spread apart, and you must drive to get anywhere. On the top left is from M Street to C Street. You could see how much parking takes up downtown. And then the bottom right, Diamond Boulevard. Trams improve transportation. People taking the tram alleviates car traffic and congestion. Tram lines increase the ease of mobility, especially for students, work commuters, the youth, the old, and those who cannot drive. A reliable tram network and rail comfort creates ridership. If you build it and it's good, they will come. Biking is encouraged as trams cut down on travel distances. And according to the 2024 Cycling Urbanism Masterclass of Helsinki, transit is the backbone of a city in which bicycling thrives. Other benefits of tram lines include less cars on the road, improving air quality and reducing noise pollution. Trams can function just as efficiently in winter climates. That is a tram in Leipzig, Germany, with a plow on the front. Trams aid visitors and tourists. Many tour buses skip Anchorage entirely. And tram infrastructure dissuades drunk driving. I often ask the reasoning of why are there parking lots in front of bars if we don't want people drunk driving? What a tram system in Anchorage could look like. The left side is the current bus map. It has little service, especially for south side, and it is mainly focused in the north. The right side is the map that I designed, services most areas of the city and has stations at major locations such as the airport, J-Bear, Kincaid, the university, downtown, and Hilltop. I also designed maps for Eagle River, Chugach, and Girdwood. Smaller communities benefit from tram infrastructure as well. It doesn't need to just be for big cities, or do they have to be all connected within the city? This is what tram infrastructure looks like in Portland, Oregon. The green and blue lines were each built in less than 5 years, and the last 4 lines were made in under a year each once they had the viable technology to build more. Most of this was bankrolled by grants from the Federal Transit Authority. Portland and Oregon paid very little compared to the cost that it took to build it. And left side is Tampere, Finland. Tampere is smaller in population than Anchorage, compared to 22,600,000, 287,000. And on the right side is Helsinki, Finland. The Helsinki tram is Helsinki has a similar climate and latitude to Anchorage. We're both very northern cities. Other examples of cities are Sapporo, Hokkaido in Japan, or Melbourne, Australia. The long and the short of it is this. Anchorage will continue to grow in population, economy, and size. The city suffers sprawl, congestion, a lack of housing, the high cost of living, and pollution. At current standing, there are more vehicles than residents in Anchorage. Anchorage needs better alternatives to car-centric transportation. The city's issues won't be solved by continuing the current status quo, and over-reliance on automobiles is unsustainable. In conclusion, transit-oriented development is a human-scale development. Trams offer a physical solution to the city. They are top of the line in quality, they are achievable, and other cities prove its viability even in winter. It would connect and upgrade the municipality of Anchorage. A lot of times when I live in Anchorage, I feel envy for other cities that have things better than we have it. And a quote by the former Department of Infrastructure Secretary, Anthony Fox, said, "The reality about transportation is that it's future-oriented. If we are planning for what we have, we're behind the curve." Thank you.
I had to look for my microphone. Amazing job, Evan. Evan was telling me this is his first presentation in a while. You knocked it out of the park. Great job. I also like your jacket color choice. That's looking very good. Next up, very happy to have us close out the presentation part of our program tonight. Please welcome Emily.
Timer. You gotta hold me to it. Okay, thanks. So I'm here to tell you about my vision for making a bike network across Anchorage that is safe and inviting for everyone to use, and that we can do fairly quickly, like on the scale of 5 years, not 20 or 30 or 50 years, which is what's currently in that nice network of plans that the first Daniel was telling us about. So why might we want to do that? Well, first of all, it might be nice to have some more options. At the moment, pretty much all of us are forced to drive pretty much everywhere all of the time. It'd be nice to choose something different. It can also be a lot cheaper for you if you can save some gas money or some car maintenance by taking fewer trips by car. It's also cheaper for the city because there's less wear and tear on the roads from cars. Brad talked about how it's great for your health to have that kind of required exercise every day. And for me, honestly, the reason that I ride my bike everywhere is just because it's fun. You get that joy of being a little kid on your bike again every day, just as part of going about your business. And of course, the times when it's not fun is when I'm navigating this hazardous system that's really been built for cars, where everyone else is kind of relegated to the margins that are not very nice and definitely not very safe. But we can change that. And it turns out one of the convenient things about Anchorage is that most of our roads are actually too big for the traffic that we have. They were overbuilt in anticipation of traffic predictions that never panned out. So we've ended up with a lot of extra space on the roads that we can repurpose for other modes fairly quickly and cheaply and easily. One example of this is on our multi-lane roads. We can take one car lane, turn it into a protected bike lane. That's exactly what we have out here. And the protected part involves that vertical element between the bikes and the cars, which makes it really safe and also much more appealing for more people to ride on than just the street. In other parts of town, we have streets that are on the grid system, like here downtown. So essentially, those streets are redundant to each other. Maybe not everybody needs to drive on all of them. Maybe we could put in a WUNRF and make some streets that are bicycle and pedestrian only. And then there are some roads that, of course, a lot of people still have to drive down, like to get to their neighborhood. But we can slow some of those down with things like just adding a speed hump. Or this is showing what are called neck downs at 4th Avenue and F Street, where the road is narrowed where you enter it. And that really encourages drivers to slow down and pay attention, which makes it much safer and more comfortable to walk and bike on that road as well. And all of these things are very possible in winter. There's lots of cities across Canada and the northern US that have done things like this and that maintain them year-round. So just to put that out there, that's not a barrier. So here's my vision for what this could look like across Anchorage. And don't get bogged down in the details. This is just a first draft. But here I'm showing the dark green lines are the multi-lane roads where we could add protected bike lanes. The sort of salmon-colored lines are 2-lane roads, so maybe we can't take a lane from those. But they're still important corridors to get to major destinations, so we could slow those down with speed humps and neck downs and things like that to make them more comfortable for walking and biking. And taken together, the green lines and the salmon lines really make the entire city accessible. by bike. So that all sounds great, but it all sounds really expensive. That was a big map with lots of lines on it. So what will it cost? So I got the best available information I could find. I did some rough calculations. This number that I'm going to show you is definitely not exactly right, but it's going to be vaguely in the right ballpark. And my number is $36 million to put everything on that map. That is assuming that we're using quick build techniques, like the cheapest, quickest possible. But $36 million is still a large number. So we can put that into context by looking at some of our upcoming road projects. These are also in that labyrinth of plans for the next 4 years. And you can see that each one of these road projects is at least as expensive, sometimes several times more expensive as what I'm proposing. So, and also each of those road projects is just one segment of one road, and it's making that segment just a little bit better than what's there now, as opposed to what I'm proposing, which is really to revolutionize transportation across all of Anchorage. So in that context, $36 million sounds like a great deal to me. And then in terms of where that funding could come from, we could certainly redirect some of the federal funding that's currently going to road projects like those. There would also be an option to do it through property taxes. And if we were to get $36 million over 5 years, that would be just a 2% increase in property taxes, which also sounds like a great deal to me, especially if you consider that if each household can walk and bike a little bit more often than driving, you would save that 2% from your household budget, and then some, very easily. Also, it turns out that if people are biking and walking to run their errands, they stop into local businesses more often and end up spending more money there. So this could really be a boost for our economy. And then finally, I think Anchorage really needs a claim to fame to revitalize us. And I think that this sort of outdoorsy transportation system could really dovetail nicely with our outdoorsy lifestyle, our great parks and our trails and our wildlife and being outside. And we could become globally famous for implementing this, just like Paris, which is pictured on the top, and Edmonton, Canada on the bottom, both of which have done networks like this over the past 10 years and have really become famous for it. So if you found this inspiring and you'd like to make this happen, come chat with me later. Thanks.
I did find it inspiring. It's true. Okay, folks, well, give it up for Emily again. And we're about to move into the Q&A portion, so I'm going to have the nerds come to the front, and then I'm also going to ask you, if you have a note card filled out, please go ahead and pass that to the front. And I can go ahead and collect it, or if Michaela's available, she can as well. Oh, Michaela's walking around. Perfect. Okay, nerds, come on over. We're going to set up some stools. Perfect. Nice. Great job. Wonderful. Look at you all. So efficient. More? Great. Yep. Yep. There should be 6 stools. Great. Great, great, great. Oh, we're Mary Dean. Here, you'll sit right here. I'm going to move this back here. Oh, sorry about that. Perfect. Look at that. Hi. Amazing. Wonderful. I'm going to sit next to you, Kyle. All right. So the very first card that I have on my stack over here, and look at all these amazing questions. This is going to be great. I don't know that we have time to get to all of them, but we're going to try our best. Oh, and another one. Wonderful. Okay, this one's great because it's just, it's good. Where can I address my $72 check to? That's 2% of my property taxes. Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so bringing it up to the top of our program, this first question is about Fairview, and it says, important to note that Fairview was racially redlined, and likely why it was. Oh, and why it was chosen for the couplet. Sure, sure. Any thoughts on the history of discrimination and racism in our transportation systems? And I'm going to float the mic around. Mary Dean, do you want to take it first? Nice.
It's so absolutely true that discrimination played a big part of where highways went in major cities all across the country. And to me, I found it absolutely amazing that it happened in Anchorage too, even though Anchorage was much later to the game than a lot of the other cities. But Fairview definitely was the only community in the municipality where Black people could even buy houses. And, you know, the fact that all of these problems landed in Fairview, and if we look back over the past few years, a lot more too. A lot of social service agencies are in Fairview, the Sullivan Arena, and all of that. So without a doubt, that's a big part of it. And I'm looking for Lindsay when I say this. It's time for Fairview. It's time for change in Fairview.
Okay, I will add some thoughts. I may cry. Last time, I already feel it bubbling up. And last time I talked about this on the assembly dais, I did get emotional, so just fair warning. But it is true. You know, there are neighborhoods in Anchorage that had deed restrictions that prohibited people of color from living there. Rogers Park is an example. Other parts of town as well. And so there was this thriving neighborhood, formerly called Eastchester, now called Fairview. And that was where it was decided to drive this high-speed, wide-lane highway through. And, you know, I think that was part of the motivation. The reason that I think that is because we were able to find, oh man, this old planning document that said nothing good will ever come of Fairview. That's actually on the public record from planners at that time. And now the motto of Fairview is where people make the difference. And so it's just been really encouraging to me to see the people of that neighborhood that I represent reclaim their power and reclaim that history and organize for good. There was a novel grant that Secretary Buttigieg started under the bipartisan infrastructure law called the Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program. And unlike some of those grants, it didn't have to be the executive branch of a local jurisdiction who applied for that grant. So the Fairview Community Council worked with NeighborWorks to apply for that grant. When I heard that they did that, they took it upon themselves to take that initiative, I said, okay, I'm going to talk to anybody and everybody that I can. I reached out to somebody in Senator Murkowski's office. They came and walked the Fairview corridor with me. NeighborWorks has led many walking tours. You guys saw Mary Dean's very astute observations from one of those walking tours. We were able to get the support of Senator Murkowski, Senator Sullivan, Congresswoman Peltola, our state representatives, State Senator Lukey Tobin, who represents Fairview, Representative Fields, Zach Fields. The Alaska Black Caucus wrote a beautiful letter detailing some of the history of Fairview. And it was like this moment where we could all catalyze around Fairview and support this, and they got the grant. And I was able to help fund the local match. And so those efforts are ongoing. But that whole grant was focused around the damage that has been done, the harms that have been caused by infrastructure mistakes of the past. What happens when highways are rammed through neighborhoods? What does that do to those neighborhoods over time? What is the disinvestment caused? And I think we've seen the plight of Fairview over time, where banks haven't wanted to invest in businesses that want to move into that area or construction projects in that area. So I'm very optimistic. Now's the time, and I would just encourage anybody who's interested in progress for Fairview, please stay connected. Watch what is going on with the Seward Glen Connection project. It's sort of the new iteration of the highway to highway. I don't know if people remember that, but connecting Gamble and Ingra, essentially the Seward Highway to the Glen Highway, because there's a lot of interesting ideas that the community is bringing forward, WUNRFs, et cetera. So now's a really special moment to press in on some of those issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Mary Dean. Oh, great.
Yeah,
Brad.
I'll add one thing. The most important project that Anchorage can do is have a solution for the Seward to Glen PEL study that we can implement, that we can fund, that we can make happen, so that there's no more disinvestment, so that we have a solution for this center core of Anchorage.
I just wanted to add to the list of what's going on in Fairview, the whole Eastchester Park master plan that's in progress, which is really, really exciting because Eastchester Park was the Black cultural community center of this whole area for a long time. So, yeah, and affordable in the Pell. We'll see how. But there's great ideas and great excitement.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm just going to keep hanging out in this couch. Me and my friend Kyle over here. Okay, so, thank you. On the topic of inequities, we actually had a couple of questions that come around to the inequities or maybe financial barriers of riding bikes around town. So thinking about gear, thinking about having like reflective equipment. So in particular, thinking about Emily and Brad, you gear up year round. I think the main question is, if you create a system where people are encouraged and excited about making transportation choices for bicycles, how do you support what is a financial impact when you're choosing to bike?
First, for one thing, I would say I don't think you really need special equipment to bike other than a bike. If you have a bike in yourself and you're able to make that bike go, I think you're good to go. It's not strictly required. Secondly, I would say think about how much money you spend on your car and how many people cannot afford that at all or are having a hardship, a financial hardship, because they have no other option. They have to have a car. They have to somehow keep it running and put gas into it every week. And that's the financial hardship that I see. There's also great community support with free helmet programs, if you do want a helmet. Free reflective gear. The state health department is always giving out reflective gear, and the city health department as well. There's a community bike co-op where if your bike breaks down, you can take it there, and there's volunteers who will help you fix your bike. And they have parts for really cheap prices. They even have bikes for really cheap prices. So there's really good resources to make it very financially viable, I would say.
I want to pitch in really quick. Never read the comments, right? So the Protected Bike Lane is a project that we've been working on for, well, over a year now, because we did the first phase last summer, going from Russian Jack Park into Mountain View, and that was really exciting, and there were some key takeaways there. This is phase 2 tonight, downtown, first ever Protected Bike Lane downtown. But one of the comments I saw was all about, well, how do the bicyclists pay special taxes for this infrastructure? Like, what are they contributing to merit this? And I'm like, they pay taxes. We all pay taxes. We pay property taxes. We pay into the bonds, et cetera. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting sort of bias, again, maybe, but our infrastructure at the end of the day, we all have to contribute to it, and it has to serve everyone.
So we're in Alaska. Does anybody go hiking? Yeah. Does anybody go cross-country skiing? So my winter gear is my cross-country skiing gear, and my summer gear is my hiking gear. Shout out to Alpine Fit. I have one shirt that I can wear pretty much all week, and it is non-odor, so it smells good all week. So you can get by without like all this. I mean, I'd say buy good gear that can last you, so you're not having bad gear. I do have the gear, but a lot of my gear actually is 20 years old, so including my bikes.
There's a couple of us that just seem to be the talkers, I guess. So one thing I wanted to say, I work with AARP. I'm a volunteer with them. I work on age-friendly communities. And one of the pieces of age-friendly communities is the Community Challenge Grant. And it can be granted for up to, I think it's $50,000. And something like, if we're getting this bike infrastructure and we need more equipment for people who can't afford it, that would be the perfect thing to submit for a community challenge grant.
Evan, Scott, yeah, some thoughts. Hold on to that mic because we're coming back to you about trains.
More to elaborate on the expenses as well, there's a barrier to entry to utilizing infrastructure in Anchorage. Sidewalks are free. Bike lanes, you have to use a bike, which could cost anywhere from $300, $500. But to use cars or the roads, which 95% of all the transportation in Anchorage and Alaska is focused mainly on roads, you have to own a car, which is a heavy investment. Paying for the infrastructure, paying for the inkeep, paying for the weekly gas bill. It's very expensive, and not everyone's able to afford that or keep up with that. And especially for the youth, there's cost of living crisis on top of that. It's a high barrier to entry, but most of the infrastructure in Anchorage is focused for that. So having more bike lanes would allow lower barrier to entry to utilize infrastructure that could be just as useful as the car roads.
Well said, Evan. Totally. Hang on to that mic. Yeah. Okay, so pivoting to trams, trains, we saw some examples of winter cities with trams and trains. So in cold climates, do trams slow down, or does the speed remain the same? Thinking about like minus temperatures and when things get really cold.
From my knowledge in the research, it doesn't so much affect the speed of how frequent the trams can go. They will most likely operate more efficiently in summer times, but the main constraint to how fast trams can go is just traffic on tram lines, how fast one stop takes to get to the next. But the main thing for winterization and making it more efficient to use tram lines in wintry climates is how builds infrastructure behind it. Namely, heated rails can be achieved, as well as overhead lines can have heated electrical lines on top so they don't freeze over or get ice or snowed on as much. And the infrastructure to utilize trams in Anchorage is just as viable as everywhere else. You just have to make a few adaptations to an Anchorage tram system.
Very nice. Okay, so this card has 5 tram-related questions for you. And when we were going through presentations and talking about your topic, I did tell Evan, you don't need to have all the answers. However, there are quite a few questions. And so if there are other folks up here on stage that have thoughts on this, I welcome them. Help Evan out. No single person can tackle all of this. Okay, so I'm going to just read these off, and you just respond to like what feels good, okay? Is Anchorage open to using federal funds for building a tram system? How much does it cost to build? Are incentives available to employers to give employees free rides on the trains? How long will it take to build it? And what would it take for Anchorage to be car free?
All right. The first question is the one that really excites me because it is dirt cheap for the state and the city. Portland is the example that I like to use the most because 85% of their light rail system, the MAX, was paid for by federal funds from the Federal Transit Authority. The state of Oregon paid for 12% and the city paid for 3%. That was an average on most of the lines. The only line that was paid for mostly by the city and state was the airport line. The Federal Transit Authority is very generous with their funding. On I believe the next question was on cheaper fares for workers or so. I can think of similar examples to how the bus system has senior citizens go free on Wednesdays, or how if you're a UAA student, you get a free bus pass, or a student. I think that similar structures in how the tram can be, tram fares could work, could work the same for that way. In tickets in places like Calgary, Alberta, or Seattle, the ticket cost for a day ride is like less than $5 on average, and many times you could buy if you live in the city, you can buy like a pass for a week or a pass for a year that comes with an upfront cost, but it saves you money overall, incentivizing more people to use it. I do need a reminder on the third question.
I mean, you covered it. That's great. That's really good. Does anybody else have thoughts? Yes, Brad.
So a big part of our transportation decisions are what people choose and show with their actions. And so if there's interest in something like this, how much are you taking other public transportation? Do you have experience doing that? How much are you biking? So you kind of, I think that's one of the things that I found with what I do with the biking is to be able to really understand it, you do kind of have to dive into that a little bit more. And so that's what I would encourage. If you like these ideas, give that a shot.
I do remember what the last question was, how long it would take. I used Portland as an example because it's very similar to how it could be implemented. But Portland's first two lines, when it was first built in the 80s and 90s, was the blue line and the green line, and they both took about 5 years or less to build. The longest part in the tram idea is planning. Planning took up the bulk of time, getting it through politics, getting it through the assembly, having Department of Transportation of Oregon look at the plans and how it would be implemented. Planning and where it would go is the biggest. That could take forever. But getting the shovel in the dirt, that's the easy part, because as soon as one line is built, you have the construction, the engineering, and the tools to build a new line on top of that. That could take way less time. The last 4 lines that Portland, Oregon made took less than a year to make each one. And in Tampere, Finland, they built their whole line infrastructure, which was actually just a few years ago, I think 5 years ago. The first line took less than 2 years to build, but that's because Finland's very adept at making transit.
Evan, did you know that the Public Transit Advisory Board has openings?
I did, and I sent my resume.
Excellent. Very good. All right. Well, I think that there were so many really good questions, but we are running up against time. So if you have questions that you would like to ask our presenters, our nerds here tonight, let's get geeky together. It'll be a great time. So the last question, Brad, I think you spoke a little bit to this, so this is a perfect transition. If I drive a car and I hate traffic, am I, like Taylor Swift, the problem? Emily's holding out the mic.
Well, I mean, it is true that every person who chooses to bike or walk or take the tram is not in a car and therefore is not causing traffic for you to drive in. So I think this is really a win-win if we can diversify our transportation system. Making Anchorage car free, per that last question, I think is ambitious, but I would love to see it.
Yes, but I would also say it doesn't have to be cold turkey. It doesn't have to be like all or nothing. It doesn't have to be like all year. Start with what works for you. Start with what works for your family. Have a bike. If you want to know how to get anywhere in Anchorage, come talk to me. I'll be happy to talk to your ear off about the best way to get from A to B. But, just start.
And I just want to add that I think everybody makes rational decisions. And, I don't drive that much. But if you are, people, they drive in Anchorage because that's the way everything's been designed, right? And so that's another choice that can be made. There's nothing organic about it. There's nothing inevitable about it. But if somebody does drive it, think about, well, why is it uncomfortable for me to not be able to make another choice, or maybe once a week to be able to walk or bike? And that's another place to start, and just look at, well, why can't I walk across the street to cars? Because there's no, because the road's designed for 45 miles an hour. There's no crosswalk. that's the kind of thing you can start looking at, and then you can get more involved when the capital improvement lists come up and you say, no, I actually do want a sidewalk there, or maybe we could narrow that lane. So I want to say that I know that a lot of people love driving, and that's great. A lot of people don't love driving, but they don't really have any other choice. So I see that people make rational decisions, and the infrastructure design really shapes a lot of those decisions. So I wouldn't get too hard on anybody for it, even though I might sometimes myself. But
Very well said, Daniel. Any final thoughts from our nerds? A logistical question, yeah. I'm going to repeat it just for folks that are listening. How do you bike in the winter if you don't have a fat tire bike?
I'm going to take. I ride. It's just a regular mountain bike. I just put studded tires on it, and it's usually fine. It's like the tires are like that wide.
And I will just add that it's much easier if you plow the bike routes. Yeah.
I tried unsuccessly. So I have a fat tire bike that a friend let me borrow that I ended up buying from him. But I tried once in a like 6-inch foot of snow, and I pretty much turned around and went home, and it was going to be unsafe. So I feel it.
We're going to enjoy the pavement while we can. And get out on the bike lane, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for City Nerd Night. We had a blast with you, and we hope that you'll join us again at the end of August. Thank you so much. Have a great night.